In the late 2000s, while many armies were shifting their focus to drones, cyber warfare, and counterinsurgency, Ukraine chose to invest in something a bit more traditional: a new main battle tank. In 2009, the country unveiled the BM Oplot, a heavily upgraded descendant of the Soviet-era T-80, developed by the same Kharkiv design bureau that once supplied tanks to the Red Army. With its distinctive, sharp-angled reactive armor plates and state-of-the-art fire control systems, the Oplot appeared capable of challenging not only the best Russian tanks, but also some of those from Western arsenals. Ukraine's leaders praised it as a symbol of national pride and a demonstration that despite the turbulent post-Soviet years, the country's defense industry was still capable of producing world-class hardware. What began as a bold effort to reforge Soviet steel into a modern war machine quickly encountered the harsh realities of post-Soviet economics. Production delays, funding gaps, and missed deadlines plagued the Oplot program. While Russia's tank exports flourished through the 2010s, Ukraine struggled for years to deliver just 49 Oplots to one major foreign customer, Thailand. At home, the Ukrainian army received only a handful, barely enough tanks to form a single battalion. Now, as the war with Russia enters its third year, the Oplot remains something of a ghost tank, caught between two eras. It was built with pride, yet in numbers too small to make a significant impact on the battlefield. So how did a tank with so much promise end up being seen as more myth than reality? Well, let's take a closer look. From T-80 to Oplot. The BM Oplot did not emerge in a vacuum. It was the heir to decades of Soviet tank development. The story begins with the T-80, a third-generation main battle tank introduced by the Soviet Union in the late 1970s. The T-80 series was cutting-edge for its time, and the Kharkiv Design Bureau in Ukraine notably created a diesel-engine variant called the T-80UD in the mid-1980s. The Malsha factory in Kharkiv had long been one of the USSR's major armor production hubs, so when Ukraine became independent in 1991, it inherited both the expertise and the infrastructure needed to build modern tanks. However, post-Soviet reality hit pretty damn hard. You see, Ukraine's defense industry faced severe economic troubles after 1991. With a new government perceiving no imminent threats, military procurement was slashed and local tank factories had to rely on export orders in order to stay afloat. Determined to keep its tank design legacy alive and break free of reliance on Russian designs, Ukraine's Morozov Design Bureau set out to Ukrainize the T-80UD. The result was the T-84, first built in the early 1990s with a new welded turret and an improved 1,000-horsepower diesel engine. This was soon followed by an upgraded T-84U Oplot model in the late 1990s, which incorporated thermal night sights and other enhancements. Yet due to budget constraints, only a few of these first-generation Oplots were produced for the Ukrainian army, around 10 tanks by 1999. Several of these eventually were sold to Pakistan and even the United States for evaluation purposes. Still, Ukraine continued to refine the design. By the late 2000s, the project culminated in the BM Oplot, also called the Oplot M, a thoroughly modernized version that was unveiled in 2009. Now, this new version embodied Ukraine's ambition to transition Russian tank design into the modern era, featuring homegrown production and upgraded capabilities intended to rival the best tanks in the world. Engineering the Oplot, features and innovations. Now, on paper, the Oplot specifications, they place it in the same class as contemporary Western designs. Its composite armor and explosive reactive armor offer protection roughly comparable to that of a late-model Leopard 2A4 tank on the frontal arc. Unlike most Russian tanks of its generation, the Oplot is equipped with both a soft-kill infrared jamming system and a hard-kill active protection system to defeat incoming anti-tank missiles. Layered atop the base armor are nojo, or knife, and duplet-era panels, the latter being a next-generation Ukrainian design capable of withstanding tandem charge warheads and even degrading kinetic penetrators. For added defense, all Oplots mount the Varta optical electronic jamming suite, similar to the Soviet Shora system, to confuse guided missiles, along with the Zaslan active protection system that can physically intercept RPGs or ATGMs before impact. Together, these passive and active measures contribute to the Oplot's remarkable survivability for its weight class. Estimates suggest that its armor could resist most older tank gun rounds and anti-tank rockets, though when facing the newest munitions, it's still going to be challenged. The tank's firepower is built around a 125mm smoothbore KBA-3 cannon, a Ukrainian-built derivative of the Soviet 2A46M gun. This cannon fires conventional APF-SDS, HE-frag, and heat rounds, and it can also launch the combat laser-guided anti-tank missile. The missile extends the Oplot's engagement range and allows it to hit targets beyond its line of sight. The tank carries a total of 46 rounds, and like its Soviet predecessors, the Oplot uses an automatic loader which enables operation by a 3-man crew, a commander, a gunner, and a driver. The autoloader not only saves manpower, but also permits a lower turret profile. However, in this design, some ammunition is stored in the hull carousel. To address the safety concerns associated with that layout, the Oplot's designers relocated a portion of the ammunition into an armored bustle compartment equipped with blowout panels, a feature long used by Western tanks to improve crew survivability. In terms of optics and fire control, the Oplot represents a significant leap forward from earlier Soviet-era tanks. It features a digital fire control computer paired with laser rangefinders and thermal imaging sights, enabling the crew to detect and engage targets effectively, whether it's day or night. Notably, the commander station is equipped with a panoramic sight, often referred to as a hunter-killer sight, which allows for independent target observation and designation, a capability comparable to that found in NATO tanks such as the M1A2 Abrams and Leopard 2A6. The integration of advanced ballistic sensors, a laser warning receiver, and fully stabilized sights along with the main gun all contribute to a high first-round hit probability. Furthermore, the Oplot incorporates upgraded communication and navigation systems, including secure radio links and an onboard GPS inertial navigation system, thereby enhancing overall battlefield awareness. Despite weighing about 51 tons, the Oplot remains remarkably mobile. Its 6TD2 diesel engine generates 1,200 horsepower, providing an excellent power-to-weight ratio and a top road speed of around 70 kilometers an hour. With a robust transmission, in later models a computer-aided automatic transmission, and enhanced running gear, the Oplot accelerates quickly and maneuvers nimbly for a vehicle of its size. Notably, it can reverse at speeds of 30 kilometers an hour, which far surpasses the reversing capabilities of older T-72, T-80 tanks, so an Oplot crew can quickly extricate themselves from difficult situations if necessary, which is quite nice. Moreover, the engine and drivetrain are designed to function in extreme climates, from frigid winters to scorching heat, reflecting the diverse weather conditions experienced in Ukraine. Now, in theory, the Oplot was a truly 21st century tank, incorporating Soviet-designed concepts alongside modern innovations in defense, weaponry, and technology. Building the beast, logistics, and production challenges. Manufacturing the Oplot was assigned to the Malyshev tank plant in Kharkiv, the very same sprawling factory that once mass-produced T-34s and T-80s for the Soviet army. However, by the 2000s, this former powerhouse had become a shadow of its Cold War self. Years of underinvestment and political turmoil left Ukraine's tank industry cash-strapped and technologically stagnant. The Oplot program soon encountered the harsh realities of this industrial decline. Production moved at a painfully slow pace. The Thai export tanks, which were supposed to be finished within just a few years, saw deadline after deadline slip by due to funding shortfalls and Ukraine's internal upheavals. An economic crisis and the outbreak of war in 2014 further disrupted the supply chain, even causing shortages of critical parts that had once been sourced from Russia. For Ukraine's military, the Oplot remained frustratingly out of reach. The Defense Ministry repeatedly postponed domestic orders, reasoning that scarce funds were better spent upgrading the existing T-64 and T-62 tanks rather than building a few expensive new Oplots. Indeed, officials noted that for a price of a single Oplot, which is around $5 million, they could modernize 5 or 6 older tanks to meet the immediate needs of the Donbass conflict. As a result, throughout the 2010s, the Malyshev plant built Oplots almost exclusively for export, and the Ukrainian army received none of the new model tanks beyond a couple of prototypes. There were efforts to invigorate production. Ukraine hoped that foreign sales would inject some much-needed capital to modernize its antiquated tank factories. In 2017, for example, officials discussed a potential sale of 100 Oplot tanks to Pakistan, with plans to reinvest the proceeds into Malyshev's production facilities and R&D programs. Joint ventures and technology partnerships were also floated as ways to update manufacturing techniques. Nevertheless, by the eve of Russia's 2022 invasion, Ukraine had managed to produce only a few dozen Oplot tanks in total, and its sole tank plant was struggling to stay afloat. Export hopes and foreign deals. From the outset, Ukraine pitched the Oplot to foreign buyers as a cost-effective alternative to Russian or Western tanks. The biggest success came in 2011 when Thailand signed a deal worth about $240 million for 49 Oplot M tanks. Ukraine won this contract over offers featuring Russia's T-80 and even Germany's Leopard 2, raising hopes that the Oplot could compete on a global scale. The export version, designated Oplot T, included custom touches such as air conditioning for tropical climates and improved communications gear tailored to Thai requirements. However, Fulfilling the Thai order, that was a bit of a trial. Production delays repeatedly pushed back delivery dates, straining Kiev's credibility. By 2017, 6 years into the contract, Thailand had received only about half of the tanks. Frustrated, Bangkok turned to China and purchased the new VT-4 main battle tanks as a stopgap measure. Ukraine did eventually complete all 49 Oplot tanks by early 2018, but the process took roughly 7 years in total, highlighting the difficulties Ukraine's industry faced in mass-producing modern tanks. While the Thai army remained polite about the delays, the message was very clear. Ukraine's nascent arms industry had struggled to deliver on its promises and on its schedule. Beyond Thailand, Ukraine also tried to court other buyers for the Oplot, albeit with limited success. Pakistan evaluated the Oplot M around 2015 to 2017, and at one point Ukrainian officials discussed a possible sale of 100 tanks to Islamabad. There were even reports that the United States planned to purchase a single Oplot for testing purposes. Morocco and several other countries were also mentioned in media reports as potential customers. However, none of these prospects matured into firm contracts. The Oplot's reputation for slow delivery, coupled with the ongoing conflict with Russia, made most buyers pretty cautious. Another challenge came from competition. Russia aggressively promoted its own T-80 and upgraded T-72 tanks, while China began offering inexpensive high-tech models like the VT-4 that undercut Ukraine's pricing. Ultimately, aside from the Thai deal, Ukraine's tank export revival largely stalled. Although the Oplot earns the unfortunate reputation of being a world-class tank on paper, few outside of Thailand ever received it in practice. The war in Ukraine and the Oplot's role. By the time Russia launched its full-scale invasion in February 2022, the Oplot was a rarity in Ukraine's arsenal. Only about half a dozen older T-84U Oplots were operational, and these were initially limited to training units and military parades. However, as the conflict intensified, Ukraine put every available tank into service, including its scarce Oplots. Open-source footage from 2022 to 2023 confirmed that at least a few Oplots saw combat on the Eastern Front, ironically fighting in the very regions where they had once been built decades earlier. In one instance, a Russian loitering munition, a Lancet kamikaze drone, struck what appeared to be a Ukrainian Oplot, but the tank's reactive armor largely prevented any serious damage. To date, no Oplot losses have been conclusively documented, and these tanks have largely played a minor supporting role in battles, a testament to how few were available. As Russia's war of aggression intensifies, Ukraine's defense leadership has renewed its interest in the Oplot tank. In mid-2023, Defense Minister Alexei Reznikov personally test-drove an Oplot and announced that the Ministry of Defense would finally procure the tank for Ukraine's army. This move signaled a desire to restart domestic tank production even amid the challenges of armed conflict. However, turning this wish into reality will not be easy. The Malyshev factory in Kharkiv sustained heavy damage from Russian missile strikes in the opening weeks of the invasion, and rebuilding tank production lines during wartime poses a daunting challenge. Meanwhile, Ukraine's forces have become heavily reliant on Western-supplied tanks, including dozens of NATO-standard Leopard 2 and Challenger 2 units. And this reliance raises questions about whether investing in the Oplot is strategically sound. Reznikov and others contend that Ukraine must revive its tank industry to avoid remaining entirely dependent on foreign donations. There are suggestions that Western partners might eventually assist with technology and components to help overcome supply bottlenecks. For now, however, the Oplot's presence on the battlefield remains largely symbolic, especially when compared with the sheer number of imported tanks and upgraded Soviet models that Ukraine deploys. The bigger picture, what the Oplot tells us. Ultimately, the saga of the Oplot transcends the story of a single vehicle. It reflects Ukraine's broader quest to transform its Soviet-era tank fleet into a modern, independent defense force. The Oplot showed that Ukrainian engineers are capable of designing a world-class tank equipped with all the hallmarks of modern armor technology. In practice, however, building and fielding this tank proved to be an uphill battle. Challenges such as a lack of funding, disrupted supply chains, an aging industrial base, and the turbulence of Ukraine's post-Soviet politics have continually hampered the Oplot project. These are the very same issues that have long plagued Ukraine's defense industry as a whole. Geopolitics left a heavy mark on the fate of the Oplot. Ukraine's ongoing fight against Russia forced critical tank components to be sourced from alternative suppliers or redeveloped domestically. Each escalation in tension, from the 2014 annexation of Crimea to the 2022 invasion, further complicated production plans. At the time, the global arms market proved to be fiercely competitive. No matter how capable the Oplot is, it struggled to gain traction against the well-funded marketing efforts of Russia and the low-cost offerings of Chinese alternatives. Perhaps the greatest lesson the Oplot offers is that technical success alone is not enough. Strategic and economic support are equally vital. Despite its limited deployment, the Oplot remains one of the most technologically advanced tanks ever produced by a non-Russian post-Soviet state, a tangible reminder of Ukraine's industrial potential. Nonetheless, Ukraine's future tank forces are likely to look very different. Given the realities of war and coalition support, Ukraine is increasingly aligning with NATO standards. It is receiving Western tanks and will likely collaborate with Western partners on any new armored programs, rather than pursuing a purely homegrown path like the Oplot. Ukraine is probably going to find success in co-developing or license-producing tanks alongside its allies, thereby leveraging both its own experience and external expertise. In sum, the Oplot tank stands as a symbol of both ambition and adversity. It highlights what Ukraine can achieve in defense innovation, while also demonstrating how external factors can hinder the best designs. As Ukraine moves forward, the lessons learned from the Oplot about self-reliance, reliable supply chains, and the necessity for international cooperation will help shape the next chapter of its armored forces. The BM Oplot's journey from the drawing board to reality, it's a cautionary tale in modern arms development. It began as a bold statement that Ukraine, despite the collapse of the Soviet Union and years of neglect, could reinvent a top-tier main battle tank on its own terms. And technically, Ukraine succeeded. The Oplot is a sophisticated machine with capabilities comparable to its global peers. However, history did not provide the nurturing environment needed for this tank to thrive. Produced in only small numbers, never mass deployed, and plagued by constant delays, the Oplot became more of a token achievement than a transformative battlefield asset. But its legacy, it shouldn't be dismissed. It exemplifies Ukraine's remarkable tradition of developing advanced armored vehicles, a practice that continues to thrive despite the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Just when it appeared that Ukraine's reliance on external armored vehicles would continue indefinitely, the Oplot emerged as a testament to the potential for homegrown ingenuity, even if that journey was fraught with challenges. Thank you for watching.